Barrie.
All right, welcome to a COVID-19 edition of Let's Be Perfectly Queer. We've got a great show today. This is our first show post-quarantine, or while still in quarantine, I guess. And when the producers approached me at Rogers about bringing the show back on during the COVID-19 pandemic, my choice of guest was a no-brainer for me. I know we're going to talk about COVID, but I also wanted to keep it light and have someone from within our community that can actually speak to a lot of the issues and what's going on within the 2S LGBTQIA community here in Simcoe County. So please welcome to the show Barrie's resident drag queen, the lovely, the fishy, Justine D'as. Welcome, darling.
Oh, Mr. Davison, how are you, darling?
I'm doing very well, very well. Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Well, you look gorgeous as always.
Thank you.
Your makeup is, I want to say your makeup is terrible because the song popped into my head, but it's so not. It's gorgeous.
Well, thank you. You're not bad for an early morning beat, huh?
I know, right? This is the second time you've been on my show and I forced you to get into day drag, so I really do appreciate that. I know the struggle is real. So I'm going to begin with getting the elephant out of the room, so to speak. And let's talk about Miss COVID 2020, COVID-19. You know, she's barely legal and she's been a bitch to all of us. So tell me, just give me your thoughts on the world today during this pandemic and what it means to you.
Oh, wow. Well, this has obviously changed life for everybody. Our lives will never be the same after this, during this. We have all had to learn how to cope with a new world order, basically, new way of working, new way of communicating with our friends and family, the lack of communication with our friends and family, social distancing. Being a single person in this time is very hard because, unfortunately, we have to self-isolate and social distance. So people who are living alone have a greater risk of depression, anxiety, all those things that come with being alone. So it's a lot of hardship on a lot of people.
Yeah, no question. And I saw a meme on Facebook just the other day that I think really brings that home in the fact that, what did it say? We're not all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. And I think that's an important distinction to recognize, that for a lot of us, this physical isolation, physical distancing, the sheltering in place, staying home, all those messages are messages that don't really have a whole lot of, when we look at it really truthfully, not a major impact on our lives. We're still able to get our groceries, we're still able to get our mail, we're still able to, in some cases, such as you and I, be with our spouses. But there is certainly a huge marginalized portion of our population that doesn't have that option. Staying at home isn't a safe option for a lot of folks, especially folks within the 2S LGBTQ community. So I think it's important that we recognize that. Think about all of our homeless population who don't have a home to stay in, and for many, that physical distancing order isn't practical, and making sure we're not forgetting those folks as well. So I appreciate that you recognize that. I had no delusion that you wouldn't, but I think it's definitely an important distinction to make, that while this isolation sucks on all levels, there's certainly many that have it a lot worse than us. So
100%.
So yeah, social isolation, physical distancing, all these wonderful things that we're going through. I know for me personally, it's caused a lot of change in plans. I had tickets to go see Hamilton in Toronto with my husband for his birthday. Other things that we had planned that have been canceled. The the Schitt's Creek farewell tour that was going to be at Casino Rama has been postponed. Very disappointing. Again, these are all things that, in the grand scheme of things, I really shouldn't be complaining. But, it certainly has affected, our social life and what we want to be doing. I want to throw a party. I want to have a housewarming party at my new house and haven't been able to do that. So those sort of things. But what about for you? What's changed in your life? I'm sure you've had cancellations and gigs and events and performances that you've had to shy away from and not be able to perform because of this. And so what have you missed because of COVID-19?
Well, in my everyday life, I'm a hairstylist by trade, so I run my own business. So that, because of the health risks involved with that, social distancing and things like that, I've lost my business. I have not worked since March 15th. And I cannot open again until the Ministry of Health and the government says we can go back to work. But even after, it's going to be a huge change. Like, I'm going to have to COVID screen all of my clients. We're talking about getting disposable capes and clients using masks and wearing gloves and things like that. So it's really going to take away a lot of that personal connection. Unfortunately, that's just what we have to do to stay healthy and safe with each other. On the Justine aspect of things, yes, I've lost a few bookings because of shows that we were supposed to do. Unfortunately, the venue that we, myself and the other local queens and kings perform at, we actually lost our venue permanently because the venue had to close because they couldn't afford to stay open because of COVID-19. So that's unfortunate. So now we've lost our space completely. So we're once this social distancing ban is lifted and we're able to get back out, we're going to all have to find a new place to even start looking to perform in our community. So that's been pretty hard. Things, not so much myself. I'm not a full-time queens. I don't do this to make my majority living, but my other sisters and brothers that are out there that are doing this as a living, this is their full-time gig, they have lost everything. So they're relying on online shows and performances and online donations. They're doing cooking shows and baking shows and makeup tutorials and all these different things. So it's really helping them kind of still show their art. For myself, this has kind of been a positive thing. And I hate to say a pandemic is a positive thing. But in my day-to-day life, I'm a very busy individual, and drag is something that I absolutely love. You know how much I love this. It is the one thing in the world that makes me happy, but I've had to kind of put it on the back burner a little bit. And now that I've had all this opportunity to be home, I've been able to do this. I've been able to work on wigs, been able to work on makeup skills, and just reconnect with some queens, and did some online shows. I did an online show last night, which was absolutely phenomenal with the Devereaux dolls. Thank you. Let me give you a little.
Oh, look at you. Look at you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
I do have to give a quick shout out to the people who I learned from online, though. So online was kind. Helped me learn all my styles for my wig. And Miss Daphne York gave a lot of good pointers on her YouTube videos and tutorials.
So I have to ask, with those cancellations that you've experienced, and certainly your own business being affected, and that's tough. Are you or any of the queens that do this on a full-time basis as their job, such as you with the hairstyling business? Is there any of the CERB benefits helping at all, or have you heard any of the queens being able to actually take advantage of some of the government assistance that's been offered, or is it one of those things where this is another area that some folks are being left behind?
That is a really good question. I can't give you a definitive answer on their end. I know at the beginning of the CERB, I even fell through the cracks because I lost my full-time job, but I do have another part-time job, which is unionized, and I was getting paid for it. And because I was making a tiny, tiny little bit of income, I was not eligible to receive the CERB. And so we were kind of stuck in limbo, and then they've changed it now. So anybody who was making $1,000 or less a month was able to collect the CERB. So I'm very fortunate for the fact that, yes, I am able to collect. So I do have some income coming in to sustain my home, sustain my bills, and feed myself and my husband, and make sure animals are taken care of and things like that. I do not know on the entertainment aspect of things, so I can't give you a definitive answer on that, but I know that a lot of the girls that are full-time queens, there's been a huge outpour with Absolute Vodka, Brooklyn Heights. Brooklyn Heights is a huge thing where she offered a bunch of queens $500. I know that the owners of Cruise and Tangos in Toronto, they offered a bunch of their full-time house queens a little lump sum of money. So they've been getting a little bit of help, but it's still a very tough time for everybody. Everybody's really struggling. The big thing I think that's really going to affect a lot of us that we haven't seen yet is the fact that our Pride celebrations have been canceled. And for a lot of us, that is our huge, income week. You know what I mean? Like, we are booked back to back gigs. We're doing shows here, appearances there, online TV show. Like, we're all so busy. And unfortunately, that isn't going to happen this year. But I do think that some of the queens are going to be putting together an online Pride celebration thing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, and I've certainly heard not a lot of specifics around our local prides, but certainly I've heard about Toronto Pride and through the Canada Pride organization and Interpride, the International Pride organization, talking about putting together online virtual prides this year, which is going to be very strange for all of us because Pride is so anchored in that celebration of togetherness and being able to be in that crowd. That's, I mean, you feed off that, right? At a Pride celebration, to just be jammed in with a bunch of other like-minded folks, and to not be able to have that. I mean, again, very fortunate in the fact that I am not alone in my isolation. I do have, like you, my husband here as well. But yeah, the whole idea behind Pride is that political movement, that celebration, that being out there in force to show that we're proud of who we are, and no one can stop that. So to not have that as part of this year's celebration, I think is going to be very challenging for a lot of us. But I think it's right. It's the only thing we can do, and hopefully, as we continue to flatten the curve and our numbers get better, then maybe Pride celebrations get extended beyond the summer, and we do things in the fall to celebrate Pride instead. So hopefully, some of these cancellations will maybe turn into postponements.
That would fingers crossed. To just keep our fingers crossed.
Have you heard anything about any of our local Pride organizations as to what their plans might be now?
Not as of yet. I know that there was. I was scheduled to do a thing, a local Pride kind of run up, kind of event with Barrie Pride that got canceled in March. So I don't know where they're going from there. I have yet to hear anything about Fierte Simcoe Pride or Muskoka Pride or any of those Pride in the greater Simcoe Muskoka area. I have been keeping an eye out. I have been online, and I am going to go and send some emails out in the next couple of weeks just to kind of touch base with people and see where we're at.
Yeah, I certainly plan to do the same. I had sent out sort of an invitation to all of the local prides to encourage them to contact me and give them a platform to talk about the celebrations and what was being planned during the Pride months. I heard back from a few of the prides, but I want to do the same thing again now and resend that invitation and find out if anyone wants to come on the show and let us know what their plans are now that we're in this pandemic. One in particular, one of our newest prides, Collingwood Pride, that had some great things planned. I think they were planning it in July, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen again. I haven't heard, but I would be very surprised if that celebration goes on, even though it's scheduled for July with the way things are going. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes of this, and what our world is going to look like when we return to whatever the new normal looks like. And I think you said it earlier, you know, it's it can't be going back to the way it was. We can't go back to the same old. There are going to be changes that are going to have to be in place. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, I think it's this has been a really great chance to sort of hit the pause button and do a lot of reflection, not only personally, but the world in general. I mean, we're looking at, you know, levels of pollution have dropped and all these other wonderful things that, you know, the world is actually becoming a better place because of this pandemic in many ways. So I think it's important that we recognize and remember that as we move forward too, so that we're not returning to, you know, to some of the things that may have precipitated this pandemic in the first place. So that's just, of course, my personal views. So, but yeah, we're doing the same thing. I'm very fortunate again that I'm still able to work in my paying job as the Gay Men's Sexual Health Coordinator at the Gilbert Center, and we've moved all of our programming online, and our harm reduction team is still doing street outreach. So I spend some of my day putting together harm reduction kits for the team to distribute to folks out within our community. So it's again very fortunate. My husband, who is in his office right now working, I see him less now than I think I did before the pandemic, because you know, he's in his office at 9 o'clock every morning, and because the work he does is on a different time zone, he's usually not out of his office till 6 o'clock. So I might see him over the lunch hour when he comes to make a sandwich, but he's back in his office on the phone again with folks in Dallas. So it's sort of business as usual, but a different kind of business as well.
I know it's a hard transition for me because I'm home doing home stuff. So I finished all of my business, all my year-end stuff, got my first quarter done for the year. And when that was all done, I was like, okay, what do I do? So it's literally just been cleaning and organizing my drag room and putting outfits together, styling wigs, makeup tutorials, wig tutorials, hair cutting and coloring tutorials for my full-time job. But my husband is still working full-time, so he works from home in our spare room. So from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, he's up there in our spare room on Zoom calls and, you know, creating websites and writing copy for the ad agency that he works for. So he's a pretty busy person, but it's a really weird dynamic because, you know, you're in the same house the whole day, every day, but you're not. So you kind of get that like separation, which is kind of nice. The one thing he hasn't gotten used to yet is me being home and me cooking his lunch and making his breakfast. And, you know, he'll be sitting at his desk and all of a sudden I'll come up with a wrap and a pop or a juice or whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, it's lunch. So it's kind of nice that way. And I just kind of touch base on what you had just said earlier too about how the world has kind of healed itself. This was one thing that I said from the beginning, that this was going to be the positive, the shiny rainbow at the end of the storm. Because of this, you know, our Earth, our Mother Earth is getting a chance to breathe. She's getting a chance to heal and regenerate herself. And the amount of nature is coming back. The rivers and oceans are cleaning themselves. The lakes are cleaning. You know, like if you look at the canals in Venice, they're crystal clear and there's these giant jellyfish swimming through them. And it's like, it's so beyond. And I even said to my husband, and I know in a perfect world it would work out, but I think that after this, every February, because February is the shortest month of the year, every February we should do this. Not shut down the economy, just shut down travel, shut down everything, work from home, and let the earth breathe for 1 month. Because honestly, it's going to save. If we continue to do this, this is going to save our planet. Yes, it's hard on us as individuals. We we forget that we are raw animals. Just because we're humans and we have these brains that think, and we're the top of the food chain, whatever. When you boil it down, we are mammals, and we are social mammals, and we need to be in our social groups. And it is very hard and very difficult at this time for us to get through that.
You're right. We're very fortunate that we have these sort of avenues to still be able to create some sort of social connection. God forbid if the internet were to crash because of all the traffic that's on the internet. What would we do if we didn't have this? If we didn't have the internet to rely on to be able to communicate with folks, and of course, everything digital nowadays, if the internet goes down, chances are our cell phones go down too. And then we're really, going to panic. I don't think that's going to happen, but I was thinking the other day, worst case scenario, if that did happen, I think you would see a much different response to this pandemic than what we're seeing now. So thank goodness that we do have these venues to be able to connect with folks still. Again, nothing beats that physical connection. I miss that terribly. You know me well enough. I love to hug, right? And I know you do too. And to not be able to do that, I had a friend of mine just the other day wanting me to join she and her children across the street at the school. We were going to social distance, of course, but the kids wanted to go to the tarmac there and ride their bikes and stuff. And I couldn't go because I was busy doing work. I've been on Zoom calls, it seems, almost 24/7. But I also said, that's probably a good thing, because I don't know that I wouldn't be able to, I would hate to have to stand across the street or even stand 2 meters apart and not be able to give you a hug because I haven't seen you in so long. And certainly the kids, their first reaction anytime they see Uncle Randy is to run up and give me a hug or kick me, depending on what their mood is. And to not be able to do that, it's like, you know what? Thank goodness I'm busy and can't get out, because I think the idea of not being able to be physical with someone right now, it's probably a good idea that social distancing is in place and is being hammered to us so adamantly, that because I would have a very difficult time with that. I really would, especially people that I really care about. You included.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think the hardest thing, there's a lot I want to talk about on this, so I'm going to shorten it really quickly. But I just want to touch on the aspect, you being the gay men's sexual health coordinator, you of all people understand what gay sexual health entails.
Sure.
Okay. We in the community, a lot of us are in monogamous relationships, but there are some of us who are in open or polyamorous relationships. There are people who are single who, prefer to play the field a little bit, and that's totally fine as long as you're safe, as long as you're on PrEP and you're using condoms and you're taking all the precautions you need to be. Then that's you. You're an adult. You can make those decisions. But with this pandemic going on, it's really important to push those needs and desires down and keep them at bay. Again, with technology, there's lots of avenues where you can connect with people online for sexual encounters and things like that, where you don't have to physically be in the same room with them. Yes, I know it's not the same, but it will get you through. Your health, as well as everybody else's health around you, is more important than you getting off. And everybody needs to remember that.
Yeah.
That being said, on the more PG version of that, out of everything, I miss hugging my mother. I am a 40-year-old grown man, and I miss hugging my mommy. Like, the fact that I have to go to her house and stand in the backyard and talk to her through the sliding glass door, or like you were saying with the kids, we went to do a social distancing visit with our best friends and their children. They're our nephews, and I couldn't touch them. My own biological nephew was here. I couldn't hug him. Yeah. Like, it's painful. It really is. But we're doing it for the health of everybody. So just everyone needs to stay vigilant, and we just need to, as everyone keeps saying, we'll get through this together, and we really will.
Yeah. And those are all very important points. I mean, I was on a call earlier this week with a bunch of other support workers from across the province. And one of the questions that the moderator asked all of us was, what's the first thing we're going to do when this is over? And the vast majority of folks responded, hug someone. and that's very common in the work that we do. We're people obviously as support workers and folks who are dealing with the marginalized folks within our community, and many of us work as peer counselors as well. That's sort of in our nature to want to help folks. So it didn't surprise me that was the first response. But I think it's also important when we talk about that, because I've also been on a lot of calls and spoke to a lot of folks in our community around sex and COVID-19, and the fact that, despite the social distancing measures that are absolutely incredibly important to make sure that we stem the tide of this pandemic, again, there are some folks that's not realistic for as well. I mean, we're talking about folks in the community that are sex workers, that this is what they do for a living, and they don't have any government assistance for their lack of income. So, and there are guys on the apps, because I do a lot of online outreach throughout the day on Grindr and Scruff and Squirt and all the other hookup apps, and there are still folks that are getting together. So it's while it's certainly not something I encourage, those that are going to still hook up, we talk about the harm reduction around that and how to hook up smarter. Making sure that if you have to hook up with someone outside of your household, if you don't have that option of being with someone who's already sequestered with you, then making sure that that third party or that fourth party is someone that you know well, and that you can verify that they've been doing their social distancing on their end as well. Again, obviously washing hands and staying clean and all those other guidelines. And so yeah, it's difficult, and it's one of those things that it's hard to reconcile, because there really is no way to really reduce harm in physically connecting with someone right now, because no matter what you do, COVID-19 is about that physical closeness, that proximity. And because it is so easily spread, we're not talking HIV that it takes work to spread. This is something that all of us can spread, and a lot of us may be a carrier without knowing it. We may be asymptomatic. So there's so many variables around it, but the big thing is that we know that science again has proven ironclad social distancing works, and we've seen that in the numbers going down. So I think that's definitely important to remember. And again, no shame for those who can't do that or just simply won't. But that's where we have to. Oh, there's my timer going off. That's where we have to talk about ways to reduce that harm. So that beepity beep that you might have heard was my timer saying that we are out of time. I cannot believe how quickly this has gone by. I need an hour-long show. I need to talk to my producers. This half hour just does not work for me. But I do want to say thank you so much. You absolutely look gorgeous. You know how much I love you and what you mean to me. So having you on the show again as the first guest during this pandemic really means a lot to me. And I know what it means for you to not only have been in drag last night and do a costume change as well. So 2 performances that you looked absolutely phenomenal in both those outfits and those wigs. Just love it. Thank you for the pictures you sent of that last night as well. But to have you get up at this ungodly hour for a queen who performed last night and beat your mug and look as gorgeous as you do again, I know that takes a lot of work. It means a lot to me, and I do appreciate it. So thank you so much, and thank you, the audience of Let's Be Perfectly Queer. It's been wonderful to be back. I hope we'll see you again next week when we have another edition of Let's Be Perfectly Queer. Thank you, Justine. Love you.
Thank you very much, Randy. Bye.
Take care now.
The following program contains a topic which may not be suitable for young viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
At Kawartha Dairy, it's been 80 years of fresh, delicious dairy products and 80 years of incredible memories. We've come a long way since 1937, and it's all thanks to our amazing customers. Thank you, Ontario. Here's to 80 more years.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.